On today's special crossover episode with Locked On Predators, how does Matt Duchene fit in with this Stars lineup? Can the Predators make up for lost production in the offseason? And how does the West shape up? That's next on Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to a special crossover edition of the Locked On Predators and Locked On Stars podcast. Both of us are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. I'm Nick Morgan from the Locked On Predators podcast, joined by Joey Erickson from the Locked On Stars podcast. Joey, it's hockey time, buddy.
Yeah. October is finally here. So preseason is fun and all, but we want meaningful games and it's right around the corner, which is exciting.
Yeah. And probably more so for you guys than us right now. Because Stars seem like they may be poised to kind of be one of the big players in the NHL this year. And Nashville Predators, I think, still trying to kind of figure out where they fit into things. But I got to imagine just a lot of excitement, at least around the Stars fan base right now, about the potential for this season.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's probably shaping up to be the best year that it's been for 5 to 6 years. It just feels like so many things are falling into place. They have contracts kind of figured out, and certain guys are locked down for more than 3 or 4 years, which is really exciting. And even the owner, Tom Ghilardi, he did an interview and kind of talked about this is the most stable the franchise has been since he bought the team. And of course, that's when they were coming out of bankruptcy in the early 2010s. So you got some stability at the head coach with Pete DeBoer now. The Stars have had a coaching carousel for the last 5 years too. So it looks like Pete DeBoer is going to be around for a few years, and you have to be really excited as a Stars fan with the second year of Pete DeBoer. He already had such a huge impact in the way the team played last year. And you have to think with everybody becoming more comfortable and you get a second season under the belt of Pete DeBoer that big things are going to be taking place here in 2023.
Yeah, as long as the Stars can survive that Pete DeBoer curse, which is just fantastic. Yes. First couple of years, and it's all downhill from there. Mm-hmm. One of the big offseason moves for Dallas, unfortunately for some Preds fans, fortunately for others, involves Matt Duchene. Of course, he was big money signing here in Nashville not too long ago, got bought out, signed with Dallas the next day. Joey, I'll start off by asking just what has kind of been the early take on Duchene in Dallas?
Yeah, he seems like a nice fit, which is a good thing. And you can kind of be worried about how is a guy going to transition from year to year to a different franchise. He's been in Nashville for a few seasons, but he's kind of done that before, of course, coming over from Colorado. He went to Ottawa and then eventually over to Nashville. So he's kind of done the process of jumping ship to a different team. So, and also he's going to be paired with Seguin and Marchment, and Pete DeBoer thinks he's a phenomenal fit. He kind of fits like a glove with him. And he's a big winger, kind of hybrid where he can play center and wing, which is something that Pete DeBoer loves too. So he can take faceoffs on his strong side. And I think him and Seguin are going to pair up nicely. And of course, he's far and away from his prime. We get that. But, he still has high level potential. He's in his early 30s. And if it's one team that can unlock something from an early 30-year-old, it's going to be Dallas. They've seemed to do it in the last few years with some of their own guys. So, I think it's going to be a great fit. He's going to be on probably the second power play unit, and that is something he can be very elite at too. And I think he's going to fit nicely. And the role he has to play here, he doesn't have to be the guy. He's just someone that is going to be asked to probably play a few less minutes and still produce at a high level, which is I think is a good situation for him. And the Stars have found some success in that with guys like Pavelski and Ben, who are playing a little bit less, but still contributing. So I think everybody's thrilled to finally watch him kind of, get going. But so far, Pete DeBoer seems pretty happy with how he's come into the organization and making a statement right away.
Yeah, and it seems like just kind of the big thing that you mentioned is just a little less pressure, a little less of a has to do it all role, maybe even a few, some fewer minutes involved there. And that's kind of what seems like the situation that may help Matt Duchene thrive a little bit. It's interesting because in Nashville, he was sort of the guy that Nashville leaned on heavily, not just, because of the way the roster shook out, but just the way John Hines, kind of managed the lineup as a coach. Is just he kind of put all the offense on those top two lines. And, when you had a situation, like where Matt Duchene was in, where you wound up kind of going against that number one defense each and every night because teams could, game plan for that.
Yeah.
That's when he struggled. That's, when other teams were able to kind of shut him down, there wasn't anybody to pick up the slack. That was a team problem, but a lot of Preds fans blamed Duchene for that, for not kind of stepping up. And, it is a little bit tough to swallow because we did see Matt Duchene a lot, kind of step up in big moments, kind of carry his team on his back. It just seems like he never quite got that appreciation in Nashville. Switch that to Dallas, where he's what appears to be the third line.
Yeah,
although I'm sure there's probably a 1A, B, and C situation.
Yeah, it's kind of the 2A, 2B is what they call it.
Exactly. Yeah. But where he's just kind of a complimentary role, and we've seen other players, like you think about like Taylor Hall going to Boston, winds up having some great seasons that, everybody kind of just, forgot about him a little bit because he didn't have to kind of be that marquee player anymore. He just had to go out and play his game. And last season, other than his MVP season in Boston, was some of the best of his career. It kind of feels like Matt Duchene is on track maybe to that this year.
Yeah, I don't think he'll have a ton of issues, right? And you kind of touched on it. There's other guys in this lineup that you probably have to key on much more than Matt Duchene with Robertson and the way that he can score at a high clip. And of course, Rope Hintz is a guy you have to key on with the speed. And then you have your Benns and Wyatt Johnstons of the world that are, seem to be formidable at that second pairing or second line, I should say. So, you go down and then you get to Duchene. So I think that's a great thing for the Stars, where you can kind of hide him and let him do his thing. And him and Seguin, I think, are going to just be great together. And also he brings the element of, he was a leader in a few places. Plus, I kind of lost my train of thought, but so yeah, he was a leader, and plus he can, provide on the power play with guys like Seguin. My point was, here it is, I found it now, is he hasn't won a cup before. He's hungry to win a cup, and he joins a long list of Stars that haven't either, and their windows slowly closing before, Father Time always catches up to everybody except Pavelski.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the big reasons Duchene coming in is crucial too, because I mean, can you really count on more 70, 80-point seasons from Joe Pavelski? He's what,
exactly
37, 38 this year. Jamie Benn, great season last year, but off season the year before. No one really knows what's going on to Tyler Seguin.
Yep.
And it just kind of seems like now, okay, Duchene's there. You don't have to have the situation where, Jamie Benn has to go out and score 70 points, or Joe Pavelski has to go out and 70 points. You still got Jason Robertson, who's, a 100-point player, Rupe Hintz, very dynamic scorer. But now it's like you can balance out that depth. You don't need to rely on some of those, more veteran names to kind of be the same players they were. You just need them to be what they are right now. And Duchene coming in, who, by the way, had 86 points 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Even if he comes in and, let's just say, scores somewhere in the range of 55 to 60 points.
Exactly.
That's huge. That's all Dallas needs, because you're contributing, you're adding more scoring, and also kind of helping maybe balance some of the regression from some of the older players. if there is regression. That's the thing. Joe Pavelski could go out and score 100 this year.
Yeah, we keep expecting it to happen, but it hasn't yet. And I think that's a great thing. And I'll give the Stars a ton of credit. They just kind of rebuilt their forward groups after, they lost a lot of depth pieces, like Luke Glendening left in the offseason. Not Ty Domi, that's his father, but Max Domi left. Yeah. And then Kivi Ranta left. Those are some of your kind of fourth line role player guys. And I think an underrated offseason re-signing was Evgeny Dadonov, and he goes perfectly with Johnston and Ben. That line was really, really good for the Stars, especially once Dadonov came over in the deadline. And then you got a veteran like Craig Smith, and you pick up Sam Steele, who's another depth piece that was in Minnesota last year. And really, you're kind of hoping for one of their young guys like Stankoven, who's like the big prospect, who will probably start in the AHL to kind of take control and force their way into the lineup. And then you're really, really firing all cylinders, because you have kind of the good problem, which is you have so many places, but not enough positions to fill. So that's a good thing to almost have too much depth.
Yeah. No such thing as too much depth.
Yeah, no.
Especially in the NHL nowadays. And that is kind of a problem for the Nashville Predators, who, of course, don't have Matt Duchene anymore, or Ryan Johanson, or pretty much anybody who was a key player from this team 2 years ago on the team anymore. So how do the Preds make up that lost production? We're going to talk about that coming up in just a second. But first, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. It's almost fantasy sports season, and when you're drafting your fantasy hockey team, do you ever wish that you could do the same thing with your business team? Pick and choose exactly the roster that you want to win the league. If you want to do that for your business, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. That way you don't have to spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. You can just do it all on Indeed. You can find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessment, and virtual interviews. And if you hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employees find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. That is why Indeed knows when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count, which is why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Again, Indeed.com/lockedon. One more time, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. All right, Joey, we are back with our special crossover edition of Locked On Predators and Locked On Stars. Joey, I kind of just want to start with your take, maybe an outsider's perspective on what the Nashville Predators have done this offseason. We mentioned you guys got Duchene now. Ryan Johanson left about a week before he did. A lot of changes going on. So just kind of from an outside perspective looking in, what's kind of the thought from other teams on the Predators?
Yeah, I think they're kind of in that in-between period where you're not really rebuilding, but you're kind of in a transition, and it probably starts from the top down too, with Andrew Burnett coming in, and he'll have his first season at the helm. So you'll be implementing systems which can work really quickly. We saw it last year with so many different teams. They get a new head coach, and then all of a sudden, 4 former Stars head coaches were leading the NHL at one point with the coaching carousel that goes on. But it was probably important to get guys like Duchene and Johansson off the books finally, and now you can kind of go a different direction. You're not expecting a whole lot, but when you have a guy in net like Jusse Sarros, it's a nice number one netminder. You never know what can happen. And of course you have some elite level players like Johansson, but Jusse on the back end, who's of course one of the top 5 defensemen in the NHL, a perennial, Norris Trophy, candidate. So Yeah, I just think it's kind of that weird transition period, and now you're going to have to look for others to contribute. I guess my question would be, who's going to have to kind of take over that role of kind of being the guy, right? And, who are some guys that you're probably going to have to step up that you didn't get to see in past seasons?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Jusse, you talk about Philip Forsberg. Those are guys that are going to have a lot of responsibilities on their shoulder. Ryan O'Reilly coming in, you hope is going to take up some of that as well. But from here on out, Joey, it's about the Preds' younger players. The prospects coming up in the system. We had a guy last year by the name of Tommy Novak, who was kind of a career AHLer, made his debut at 25 and wound up scoring, 48 points in 55 games. He's going to be a big factor in this Predators offense moving forward. He's already been, a major part of the preseason. On his wings are two other young players, Phil Tomasino and Luke Evangelista, two high Predators draft picks. Tomasino was a first rounder, Evangelista a second rounder. Those are guys who came in at the end of last year when everybody was either hurt or traded somewhere else, and they played very, very well. You kind of look at that line as being we don't have Mikael Granlund anymore. We don't have Duchene or Johanson. This is kind of that line that's going to have to provide the help for Forsberg and Jusse to get some of these points. I don't really think we know what their ceilings are quite yet. We just haven't had a good look at them in the NHL, consistently long enough to kind of see what they're going to become. And we also really haven't seen them that long in Andrew Burnett's system. But if they get off to a strong start, there's hope that they can kind of be that next generation of 80, 90 point Nashville Predators consistent scores, especially in an offense like Andrew Burnett's, where it's just so run and gun on the front foot all the time.
Yeah, and you can have a lot of success with that too. Lindy Ruff for the Stars came in for a year, and the Stars pretty much obliterated everybody offensively. And in today's NHL, it fosters that. The league wants to score goals. They want you to. There's tons of penalties. You get a ton of man advantage opportunities. So, and I think that's an exciting thing. Yeah, you probably don't have a lot of huge expectations, but you can see guys now that it's kind of put up or shut up time, right? You either produce or you're done. So, there's probably a few more years before you get back to where you're really competing at a high level. But what do you think your chances are probably kind of getting into the playoff conversation and things like that? Is that something that you're expecting them to maybe get to a wild card spot, or would that be kind of icing on the cake for this year if they were really competing at that level?
Well, you kind of mentioned that this is kind of like a trial year for a lot of people. I describe it as like the first couple episodes of American Idol from back in the day, where it's like, you had the auditions, you brought in like the people you want. Now but they still, like, this competition hasn't started yet. There's still like 30 people that you're going to try to cut down to like the top 15 who are going to be on every week. This kind of feels like what is right now. Barry Trotz brought a lot of people back from last year's team on one-year deals. You have guys like Alexander Carrier and Dante Fabro, two defensemen that 9 months ago, a lot of people thought were going to kind of be the future of the Preds defense. They're on one-year deals and kind of seem like they're just competing for a spot between the two of them at this point. So it just kind of feels like this year is just sort of let's see what we really have. Like, let's put the system in place. Like, let's play how we want, and let's see who, like, the players we have now can do in that system. And then let's just see where we're at. Hey, maybe we just really did need a new coach. And all of a sudden this team, like a mix of veteran players and up and comers, flirt with the playoff spot. I would say that is best case scenario for Nashville Predators this year. The fact that they can take this team and get into the playoff conversation, that is a magnificent win. To me, it's more realistic that this is sort of a, I don't want to say lost year, but just sort of the year where there's not going to be a lot of expectations. The only thing I will say to that is that I am not going to rule out playoffs when there is number 74 in net. Because Jusse Sarros took one of the worst statistical teams in the NHL last year and brought them within a game and a half of getting to the playoffs. There is a chance that he can do that same thing again. So let's not rule out just the goalie-fueled miracle run to the postseason here.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's probably a big next step for the Predators too, is taking more weight off the shoulders of Sarros?
Absolutely. I mean, it's easy to be goalie when you're only have to stop, 23 out of 25 shots and not 47 out of 50 night in and night out. And I do think that's going to be a big test for the Preds early, is how can they clean up some of the defense in front of Sarros, because, I would say maybe just 10 fewer shots a game. Maybe that's one fewer goal allowed per game. And then all of a sudden, Nashville Predators have, maybe some better goals against, goals for statistics.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Nick says don't rule out the playoffs. I wouldn't either when you have a number one netminder. Stars fans know about that too. It's nice when you have somebody in the pipes that can clean up a lot of the mistakes that are made in front of them. And I guess we'll kind of segue into our conversation next about kind of our overarching look at the Western Conference. Are the Stars the favorite? Where does the Preds fall in line into that conversation as well? And we'll do that in just a moment. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. When you're watching the Cowboys game and they're probably going to disappoint you another week, even though they got it done last week against the Patriots. But we all know they're just reeling us back in, as they always do. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. Sprinkle a little bit of money on those Cowboys and see what they can do. App is so easy to use. Wide range of betting options. You got spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. All of that good stuff. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, we are back with our special crossover edition of the Locked On Predators and Locked On Stars podcast. Thank you for making both podcasts your first listen every day. Joey, I think the overwhelming sentiment is, after all of these changes for the Dallas Stars, after, seeing the kind of season Jason Robertson had, and, Wyatt Johnston making a big debut, and Miro Heiskanen having kind of a bounce back season, and just all this young talent around the team, a lot of people are kind of saying the Dallas Stars might be the favorites in the West this year. What's your take on that? Is Dallas really, in your mind, the team to beat?
I think they're definitely one of them because of a lot of the names you mentioned. The only reason I would slow a bit on that is just due to the fact that they are a bit older and they have a lot of veteran talent, which can be a bit difficult come the regular season, I would say. And you get some good teams like Edmonton and McDavid, where they're just boat racing a lot of teams, and they just, they can run up and down and create havoc for the opposition. But yeah, I think the Stars are right in that conversation. And the reason I probably put them number one to be the best team in the West is just because of Ottinger, frankly, because he's going to give you a game night in and night out. You're going to be in the contest when he's playing. And he played a ton last year due to the fact that Scott Wedgwood, the backup goalie, got hurt for about a month. So they didn't want to play him as much, but they ended up having to. And with him in net, I think you're in every contest. And in the West, I think there's a lot of question marks for a lot of other teams. And I think every team kind of does. The Central's not as deep as it used to be. So I think the Stars are easily going to be in the top 3 for the division in the Central. And then you're kind of thinking about Vegas. You never know with the Stanley Cup hangover. How's that going to work? Sometimes teams, they're not able to replicate what they did the season prior. LA is going to be nice, of course, probably. They continue to have those young guys, but I think the Stars have the experience, and there's enough guys with known predictability that can get the job done. And I think that's what makes them kind of the darling right now of the Western Conference. Plus, they have all these guys on great deals, and I think the window looks like it's just opening for these guys.
Yeah. Interesting question I kind of want to ask you. So you mentioned all the, kind of the up and down. You mentioned Vegas, Colorado, I think is another team.
Yeah, can't forget about them.
Have their eye on. So excluding those teams, and let's keep this in the Central Division. Is there a team out there that maybe you think can kind of be the dark horse and jump into this divisional race a little bit?
Yeah, if I had to choose two, if I went with a couple, probably St. Louis. They just seem like a team that's always competitive and are going to give you a fight. They're not a team that seems to want to go down, and they're not going to go into the full rebuild type of situation. Yeah. And they still have some guys there. Arizona, I think, is primed to just be the, like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, they could be in a playoff spot, like, at Thanksgiving time, and we're like, oh my God. And then they could completely just crash and burn. But with a team that has nothing to lose, and you have some high talent coming in there with the Logan Cooley, and you added some veterans, which is nice. You got Matt Dumba on the back end. And that's a team that with no expectations, you're playing at Mullet Arena. Who knows if they come out of nowhere and are kind of putting the league on notice. So those are a few of the teams I think could be really dark horse. Blues they always give me the ick almost, where it's just they're just going to be around. They're going to hang around, and you never know with Berube in them.
Yeah. You mentioned Arizona. First off, give me a playoff game at Mullet Arena. I did not know I needed that so bad until we started talking about that. So that thought gun into my head. Yeah. St. Louis is interesting just because it feels like the last couple of years, their entire season really hinges on Jordan Binnington. And that's kind of been the main takeaway is, can they, get stability elsewhere in the lineup? That's going to, I think, kind of be the big key to St. Louis. But I agree with you. I would say St. Louis is kind of one of those teams that's like I see a lot of upside in what they do as well. Let me ask this regarding the Stars in the West. Is there? I kind of want to be like careful about how I say this. But would it be just sort of a letdown not getting to, let's say, at least the Western Conference Finals this year? Like not just like we should have made it, but more of it like in a no, this team should have done much better than this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it would be. I really do. And those are high expectations. I understand that, but with the team that they've assembled here, it kind of feels like it's almost Western Conference Finals or bust situation. And, there's some teams that are completely different where it's Stanley Cup or bust, but it's hard to get to the Western Conference Final. It is really, really hard to do. Yeah. But, they're primed and ready to do that again. And if they get there, I would be satisfied. Of course, you want to reach your ultimate goal, but I think it would be some sort of letdown because, there's a lot of question marks with this Stars team because they have a lot of old guys that are, on the tail end, and Pavelski's only on for one more year. That could be his final time. We don't know. His retirement's right around the corner. He's about to be 40 here by the end of next year. So that's going to be a conversation you have to have. And we touched on it in the beginning. How much more can you get out of Ben and Sagan and these guys? At some point, it's really going to catch up to them. And of course, they're happy with, I think, their development and the guys they have coming up. But, you have this core that's still around that, the fan base wants to get a cup because I think as a Stars fan, you're just going to be really disappointed if you never got one with your Sagan and Ben. with how much you've been paying those guys, and you've had them here forever, and they're big pillars of the organization. And it's just going to feel like a missed opportunity. And they've had a couple of good chances here in the last 5 years or so. Some of it may be fluky, but there's luck that plays into the playoffs, and the Stars, they took it and ran with it. Unfortunately, did not get the ultimate goal, but they're right there, and now it's time to really take control. So I would say Western Conference is kind of the level, the bar that you want to meet if you're the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, I think I'm putting my money on it, if I had to be honest. I just kind of see them as that Colorado team for a couple of years ago, where it's just on paper. Yeah, it's just there's just so much talent there that I don't know who consistently beats them. At least that's my pick. I'm sure there's some people in Vegas and Colorado that'll have something to say about that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there's always those teams that will find something. They find something extra, and so hopefully the Stars can do that this year.
Yeah. Well, Joey, thank you so much for joining us. For our listeners on the Predator side, let us know where they can find more of your work.
Joey the Jet 19 on Twitter or X or wherever that is. I got some other work. I do some play-by-play in the North American Hockey League, so you can hear my voice and hear me screaming when when my team scores goals and other things like that. But other than that, that's it. So pleasure to be on with you, Nick. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be in contact throughout the season when the Stars and Preds meet eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And for any of your Stars fans, you can find me at _NS Morgan or read my work at penaltyboxradio.com. That's going to do it for us on this crossover edition of the Locked On Preds and Locked On Stars. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Both our shows will be back tomorrow with all new episodes. We'll see you then.